Welcome to Portals, where we endeavor to bring to life perceptions and practices that help us make sense and resiliently lead through the shift underway with purpose, balance, and well-being. We are seeking to grow the community as organically as possible. If you are enjoying this content and getting value from it, would love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel and help us get the word out by sharing this content with friends you think will find Portals valuable and enriching. Central to the Portals project is a sense of a regenerative arising, a personal regeneration, the sense of a communal regeneration, and possibly a broader regenerative evolution for humanity at large. Why is this sense of renewal and regeneration so central? Well, our premise is that humanity has entered a critical phase transition, where crisis and pain, confusion and turmoil are some of the below-the-line symptoms of this large-scale shift. Inside this upheaval, there is a great potential for renewal, and radical approaches to complex, wicked challenges are emerging through individuals, teams, and communities dedicated to facilitating the rekindling of natural genius and the release of brilliance and regenerative coherence. Teresa Collins is the co-founder of the Global Coherence Pulse. She is a leader in the rapidly growing field of transformational learning and community emergence, and she brings decades of experience in leading whole system transformation to facilitate well-being and growth. Teresa, welcome.
Thank you. I love being here with you. I'm looking forward to our exploration today.
Yes, there is much that we want to reflect on. And let me begin. So Julie Kroll connected us. Thank you, Julie. And so let me ask you the first question that I asked Julie. Given that we call this place Portals, what is the portal you're in right now?
I love that question. The portal that I'm in right now is what is emerging. I'm in the last month of a 3-month virtual retreat with a community that is part of the Islands of Coherence. And the retreat name was Cultivating Coherence in Community. And it was really an experiment. What happens when we come together and we focus on 3 main things: the quality of our presence, our resonance with life, and emergence, what's emerging as we do that. And so this month we're in Emergence, and I have really been enjoying dropping into this question of what is emerging? What's emerging from inside of me as I focus my attention on my presence, as I really come into resonance with the life that's emerging from inside of me in the midst of everything that's going on, and the quality of that questioning and the quality of my listening is really deep right now. So I would say my portal right now is emergence.
So given that you started there, what is the nature of this 3 months experiment and what are you discovering?
Well, one is this experiment was a way for us to launch our social network, the Islands of Coherence Social Network. And it was the result of a cohort of people. There were 7 of us that came together to support this community and its growth, and what was its role, how could it serve right now. And each one of the people in the cohort all had something they felt they could offer humanity right now, but didn't really have an experience of how to do that. So we came together, and over this 9 months, each person birthed their offering that they wanted to offer the community. And so we decided that as a way to launch our offerings, that we would invite people to come into the Islands of Coherence and for 3 months to dedicate their attention, their time, their energy in cultivating greater coherence in the heart of their daily life and through them into the world. And we decided that it wasn't going to be a prescriptive course, like you do this and you do this and you do this, but that we would actually invite the community over those 3 months to hold different questions, contemplative questions, different practices to explore those 3 key themes. And they're ones that I've been exploring my entire life. I think from the moment I heard this quote, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to lift the system to a higher order. There was something in my cells that got that somehow we were the answer, and there would be a moment when things would be highly chaotic, and that it would be up to us to hold a coherent presence. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time, right? I mean, I really didn't understand it, but my cells knew it was true. So I started my whole life has really been around exploring what is presence for me. And what we've been discovering in this retreat is that people are really ready to put this purpose first. People are really ready to let the life that they came here to lead to be what draws them forward. They're ready to have greater hope and trust in life and to move their attention away from the things that are going out around in the world that they don't resonate with anymore. We've been learning as a cohort that offering a retreat where we're emerging every week. We don't plan what the next week is going to be. We've been coming together and seeing what questions are arising now. What does the field have to say about it? And I think we've all, in fact, we had a meeting yesterday, and every single one of the cohort has something amazing emerging in their life, like life-changing emergence is occurring. And it's because we actually put our own oxygen masks on. We decided that our own passion was important, that if we put our attention on that something would emerge from it. And we entered the retreat in the way that we were inviting people to enter it. So we didn't just stay on the outside and say, okay, we're doing this, but we actually took a month to really consider the quality of our presence. We took a month to really consider, what are we resonating with? Where is our attention? Where's the vibration of ourselves, and how is that impacting everything? And this month, it just started a couple of weeks ago with this question of emergence. And it's such a fantastic question to ask from a place of greater presence. You know, you can ask what's emerging from a place of kind of distraction and everything that's going out in the world. But when you ask from here and you allow for there to be kind of an unknowing, like the answer is not just some surface answer. It's actually some deeper impulse that wants to express itself through you. And so it opens up a quality of listening, I think, that most of us haven't really taken the time for. And because we've done it in community, because we've been in a field where everybody's doing the same and everybody's putting their energy into their own cultivation and then sharing it, I think we've all been able to achieve something that we wouldn't have been able to get to on our own. So those are some of the things that we're learning.
Yeah, so a journey from resonance and presence to emergence. And you are describing a sense of readiness to be fully present to your purpose, being fully present to what is emerging. I imagine in some cases, these are people that have been journeying to cultivate that readiness for a lifetime. In some cases, It's more a recent, perhaps, discovery. But how would you characterize that sense that you are describing as we are ready, people are ready, people all over the planet are ready? What would you say to that quality of readiness? What is it?
I mean, I can speak from my own experience. I mean, that's really the only place that I can speak from. I know my readiness came as an internal vibration. You know, there was something about my life that was more wanted from the inside out. And the more that I listened to that and didn't push it away, the more I found myself, you know, discovering new ideas, like listening for hints that resonated with how I was feeling inside. But I'm noticing from the work that I'm doing with the Global Coherence Pulse, with the Islands of Coherence social network, with the evolutionary leaders group that I'm involved in, with the 99 Days of Peace through Unity with World Unity Week, every plenary session, every meeting that I'm in, all of these opportunities for us to come together around projects, the thing that people are saying most is that the change needs to happen here, that we need to come into coherence inside of ourselves in order to address the issues that are happening on the planet. And I'm seeing it over and over and over and over again. So even though people might be talking about their projects, they're starting to talk about them in relationship to how can we become more coherent as a group? How can we, you know, become more coherent inside of ourselves so that we can give the gift that we came here to give? And so I'm feeling this readiness. I've always been feeling that readiness, but now I'm feeling it kind of en masse. I'm feeling it in all of the groups that I'm in. I'm feeling it in the communities that I'm involved in. And frankly, I've been feeling it for a long time, but I have been in communities that have been following the ideas of conscious evolution and resonance science. So for me, I've been feeling that rising up of, I want to be the person I came here to be. I want to be a positive contribution on the planet. I want to live my purpose. I mean, I've been feeling that and been involved in communities that are choosing that for a long time. So, yeah, that's what I would say. It's a stirring that you really can't ignore. It's a stirring that you have to, at some point, turn your attention towards. And when you do, something amazing starts to emerge. And that's an alignment with yourself.
Yes. Perhaps we can call it the Gandhi moment when we realize that we've got to become the change we want to see in the world first on the inside. I never thought about it in this way, but it is in a way a Gandhi moment or a chain of moments, never ending moment.
Well, I think for a long time though, we've said that. I think we have been saying we need to be the change we wish to see in the world. And it just became this kind of platitude that we spoke. And I think the difference right now is that I really feel like people get, not from a platitude, not from a speaking, we need to be the change, but something is stirring inside that has us know in ourselves that we are the change, unfolding, emerging, that whatever's happening on the planet, we're not separate from it. It's happening from the inside out. And that's the difference. I think some turn has happened where we're beginning to wake up individually and collectively to our role in this precious and precarious moment on the planet. And that gives me so much hope to feel that.
Yes. Well, so Teresa, let me ask you, when you describe that sense of resonance and what is emerging, what is the story, the big story that you have in mind about this evolutionary moment? What do you believe is the nature of this shift in the biggest framing that you can imagine about it?
I mean, for me, it's a quantum leap that's occurring. So what's coming, I believe, is radically different than where we are. I don't think we're heading into a moment of incremental change. I think there's a consciousness shift that's occurring. I think, from a place of not just an awareness of the unity of all things, but an experience of that consciousness is going to change the way that we relate to everything. It's going to change the way we view everything. And so for me, I can't describe where we're headed, because when I do, my whole system's mind becomes very myopic and I see one path to something. But when I stay open and I attune to life around me, like Mother Nature, like I'm a tree person, my trees are my greatest teacher. But when I attune to something that's unknowable, but that I know I'm a part of, and I begin to imagine what that is, it's a consciousness aligned, expressing uniquely as this unfolding evolutionary impulse, and that I have a note that needs to be sounded. And when I sound my note, loud and proud or soft and sweet, whatever it is, that's the natural reflection of that note. That I and all of us, like as we sound our notes, will come into harmony with a symphony of change that's occurring. And I believe the planet, well, in the 2 months that we were indoors when COVID hit, the earth regenerated herself at a scale that was unprecedented. Unprecedented. The regeneration was unbelievable. And so I believe that as I sound my note and I align with the shift that's occurring without trying to define what it is, then I can become an instrument of this regeneration that's happening, whatever I do or do not do. I mean, I don't know, humanity might not make it across this threshold, but I know that life knows how to innovate. I know that life knows how to take a leap from a moment when we're in maximum chaos, because it's part of the pattern. And that in those moments when things are destabilized is when a leap can occur. So for me, I'm not projecting into the future as much as I'm saying, there's a leap happening, there's a big wave coming. And I can either turn and face it and say, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I don't even know how to help. Or I can turn in the direction of it and I can let myself be part of that wave moving forward. And what's on the other side? I know I'll be astonished. I know that I will be astonished at what's on the other side. Because when you think about the past leaps, single cell to multi-cell, I mean, that was a crisis. That was a huge crisis in this early seas of Earth. And look, the biosphere emerged. So I have this internal trust that if I am coherent, if I sound my note, if I align with what's emerging, not the story I'm being told by the media or anything else, but I really tune into the story that's emerging inside of me, that somehow I'll be part of that astonishment emerging. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does. You're describing, let's rethread through some of the characterizations or the patterns that you are sensing and intuiting. You're describing a wave, and that within this wave, it leads to a shift from awareness to a throughout whole person experience, and that experience has about it the complete or near complete sense of coming into alignment, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, cellular, where you're describing a quality of network and connectedness inside of which there is a symphony that can be found, and yet that within the resonance and the greater symphony that's emerging, still every note and every voice has its own individuated significance. And it's not about homogenizing and losing the unique characterization of the unique note that you are. It's actually about the fuller manifestation, whether you are a nurse or a doctor or a teacher or a person that works in any other space in life, whether you're managing people or whether you are leading without a title, whether you're operating in a small team or a very large institution. In all those different systems, there is a sense of something that is good, looking to make a leap to its higher potential rather than the entrenched limitation that it is historically captured in. And that release can only fully be realized through many different voices, through many different notes, as you say, playing their part, because it's not going to be orchestrated in a centralized way from any power system, from any charismatic leader. It actually needs a distributed, co-emergent nature. That's how I translated or received what you offered there. What is that promoting in the furtherance of that sensing in you?
Yeah. I mean, that was beautiful. Thank you for receiving it in that way and reflecting it back so beautifully. And I love that you started to mention about teams, because what I'm also noticing as I tune into my unique note, one, I'm doing less. I'm working less. I'm more efficient in the way I use my energy. And there's less of this sense of that I need to do something, right? Like I need to do this or I need to be this. So, anybody that's listening, there's this dropping in that we can do where we let go of some idea about how we can serve. And we start to tune into the uniqueness that we came here to be. And it is in that diversity. It is in us doing our unique note and everybody doing that unique note that something new is going to emerge. It's going to astonish us. So I love that part. And also what I'm noticing, and I have for many years, is I'm tracking a solar system of organizations that are all working towards a similar goal. They're all serving similar communities of people. And I see that coming together. And just in the last year or two, I'm seeing that we're being drawn together in closer and closer collaborations and circles, and noticing what's required for us to let go of our bundles, lay our bundles down, all the things that we've done that have got us here, all of our wonderful projects and all of it. And we need to lay them down, bring everything that we have, and start to come open to, so now what's being called from me as I come together with others who are playing different parts that maybe I played all those parts. And now I'm coming into configurations where I'm really having to tune into what's the contribution that I'm being called to make in this larger frame of reference. Finding that I'm letting go of many different parts so that the part that I'm uniquely designed for can be contributed in that situation. And it's not easy for people. I'm seeing a lot of people holding on to their bundles, right? And then this is the most important thing, and it's the center.
Yeah, so let's just stay with this a little to unpack what you are describing in that sense of letting go or release. What is this quality of release and letting go? And why is it so critical to facilitate what you're describing is trying to emerge?
Well, and the exploration of presence, one of the things that I noticed was whether I was in resistance to what was, resistance to life, or whether I was present to whatever was true and then choosing how I wanted to respond. Because when I was in resistance, I actually wasn't really in the present moment. I was in some past experience or some future concern. I wasn't in the present moment. And so that's one piece, was that as I started to notice when some part of me went like this, clenching inside in my body, in my languaging, in my relating, that if I were to just let go of my clenching and just stop for a minute and be present to what was true, whatever it was, it could be really super challenging. I've had lots of challenging moments in my career. If I can relax and be present and choose, then I started to enter into a bit of a flow. I entered into more of a flow state of being present. So then I'm coming now into relationship around work, or I'm coming into a team situation, or I'm coming into these collaborations that are starting to happen. And as I lay my bundle down, as I say, I'm not going to be attached to what I'm doing, because now as I'm tuned into my unique note, I'm more attracted to what my part is than being attached to the thing that I'm created. And I've begun to actually create things saying, I think it's time for us to build to learn, not build to last. And that came from being present, releasing resistance to what is, finding out what I really was resonating with. And then that question of emergence, instead of me deciding what my role was, listening to see what was being called of me if I was present and I was responding to what was emerging, not my idea about it. And I think that's the little place that we're at, this little event horizon between we're designing how we're going to get through this mess, and everybody's got their ideas about what their role is and how they're going to do it. And it's being guided by fear and resistance and all of that. And instead showing up with, one, the sense of trust that life knows how to do this. I think if I didn't have that, if I didn't have this trust that life, like Earth regenerated herself in 2 months in an unprecedented way, life's got this. If I didn't have that trust, it would be harder for me to listen and relax and notice what's emerging. And the more I do that, the more I find myself in leadership positions, in these leaderful collaborations, because I'm not attached. I'm not bringing in my part. I'm listening to the whole part and actually excited by what might be happening as these things are called together from some deeper impulse. And so the more I'm open to be astonished and surprised and curious, the more I'm seeing life's doing something right now. It went from individual imaginal cells to, I think, organelles. I think the new body is forming right now in rapid iterations. That's my experience.
So the letting go of resistance is at core, in my experience, letting go of fear. As you described this, made me reflect along my journey, how every time I felt I found something precious that was that was differentiated, it became sooner after it something that would become a prison. There was a time I was leading workshop processes in Fortune 100 companies already. This was the early 2000s, and there was a time where I worked with a modality where I would use 4 easels in front, because I had this idea that I was not going to do PowerPoints, because when you work with 4 easels, you actually tell a story, and people never just see one slide. They always see the last 3 pages when you open the next page. So there is a certain storytelling quality to the experience. And it was truly differentiated and unique. At the same time, it was labor intensive, and I became captured by the methodology. And I couldn't envision how I could do without it, but it became my limitation. And so I was hiding behind my methodology until I was forced to give it up, let go of it, because the intensity of the work I moved to do never allowed me anymore to produce this kind of labor-intensive preparation. And a similar thing happened at the beginning of COVID, because I had this story in my head that I get paid so very well because I'm in the room with people and I can produce a certain impact with them in presence that justified the fee structure that I worked with. And the reality was that when we migrated to Zoom, we discovered some people said, no, you don't understand. You are able to create for us something even better in Zoom. It's very efficient when we do these in an event. Sometime we will shift in 6 hours, we will shift 6 or 7 or 8 times the format, sometime every 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, in twos, in threes, in larger groups. But what's the moral of the story? Every time something presented itself as the modality or the method or the way to do something that I get attached to, it becomes a limitation. And so step by step, what I found that I was called into was to release anything that presented itself as a precious capacity. And so far, so good. It's a journey of discovery. What I am unearthing in this is the point you just led us to. Can I feel when there is a resistance inside? Can I track what the source of the resistance is? What is it I'm afraid so much to lose? Am I afraid to lose control? Am I afraid to lose influence? Will I lose my whatever? And am I prepared to let go of that? And if yes, then what's on the other side of that is a sense of discovery. And what you are proposing is that when people inspire and catalyze this in each other, what becomes possible on the other side of that, where teams and large organizations and networks is extraordinary and sometimes unimaginable, because if we could imagine it, we would already be there. But it's the release that unlocks the flow of creativity and of life that astonishes us.
I have that same story. I think in order to get to the place of release, we need to have those moments where we found ourselves trapped by the thing that we were confident in, and our ability to actually notice that. I had it early on when I was working with Barbara Marx Hubbard, and I used to be a very much just this body feeling person. Like I felt my connection to life, but I hadn't really brought it into language. And when I met Barbara, she started talking about conscious evolution. And all of a sudden, the language and my experience met each other. It was like this bang that happened. And in that moment, my whole system's mind turned on. I actually hadn't had that experience because my body was doing all the perceiving. And so now I had this body that was perceiving, but now I had this capacity in my mind that I could track all of this multiple things. And Barbara was she had so many different projects going on, and I could hold them all and I could notice, well, what's emerging that if we put our attention on would begin to support what's happening. And if I started to attach my identity, like, oh, wow, I was maybe 32 at the time. Oh, I'm going to be like a teacher on the stage, or I'm going to be this curriculum designer. If I attach my identity to anything that was emerging at the time, my whole system's mind would become myopic and I would just get that path. And I started to notice it. And it was so strong that I was like, whoa, if I just let go. And so if I keep showing up and seeing, well, how can I contribute? How can I show up for that? And it is really challenging right now. I think many of us have been working really hard over the last many years. And we've been creating things that hold the seed of this new consciousness, right? It's more collaborative. We're trying to give everybody a voice. Like we're starting to use principles of nature in our design. And in some ways, our bundle feels like it's the answer, like it's the hub, it's the thing. I know I'm following that pattern. And we're the ones who are being called to collaborate. And we're the ones who need to let go of our bundles and release our ideas. We need to release those places where we're being bound, because whatever's being called forth next, whatever's being called forth next is going to be radically different than what we're bringing right now. Love that. I love the curious nature of it. It feels exciting to me than coming with, I know how we're going to do it. It's a little scarier to say, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know that I have something to contribute.
So all these polarities, the people that are feelers and feel it somatically in their body versus the people that are in their minds and configure ideas and conceptualize. It's one polarity. The polarity where there are those who feel that the transformation needs to happen on the inside first, and those that want to actually build the systems and the structures that will facilitate change. All those polarities, what you're describing, they need to integrate, and all the various attachments, because so we can be attached in the muscle we know to use well. So if you're a feeler and a listener and you have that modality and pathway so activated in you, it's great. But if you expect that everybody else will show up in this way, then that becomes an attachment. If you are attached to your modality or to your framework or to your map of how to tell the evolutionary story, or the stages, or the quadrants, or the steps, or the whatever journey, all of those, they're all very important as infrastructure. And people will speak to the importance of, can we harmonize terminologies, and can we identify that when we use the word emergence or coherence, and in a few minutes I will ask you to go deeper on some of these words, that we actually are sharing the same language. So there is validity to do the work of harmonizing terms, modalities, practices, but there is never the enforcement that everybody needs to come to agree, or to the one and only pathway that defines the field of possibility. Because what you're describing is you need all of those different systems, capabilities, modalities, pathways. You need all of these lines of development, and you need to allow them to be who and what they are, and what they have to contribute, and how they will show up inside that greater coherence. All of that is to be discovered. So there is a meta capacity, a meta processing to enable all of those to arise, not to even see them necessarily all as equal, to be able to be free enough in yourself to maintain a certain inner structure and including hierarchy of importance in yourself, but not a hierarchy that becomes domineering on the whole. So all of that is a very sophisticated, multi-perspectival, multi-paradigmatic permission and capacity in oneself to facilitate these processes.
Yeah, and simple at the same time. I mean, at least for myself, the more that I'm relaxing and releasing resistance, the more that I'm letting go of those things that are my safety net, right? Here's how I do it. The more I do that, the more I find myself in situations where my genius is being called forward, and I have compassion, and I'm listening for the diversity. I'm listening for something that's going to create a question that's going to bring things forward. So So it's complex and it's challenging and it's so multi-layered. And at the same time, the more I focus inward and doing it as a community, there's something that's opened up as we did it together. So the more that we're willing to do that, lay our bundles down, come up with questions, allow for the diversity, be okay with resistance and struggle when it comes, because sometimes it's fruiting us to think outside the box, all of those things. It's becoming easier and more fun to be in those situations. It really is. I'm that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling more optimistic, more excited, and more curious than ever. And I know I have a part, but I don't have to push it in there.
Including there is no need to resist resistance. Even that is part of the discovery. So I'm curious about the name Islands of Coherence Network, because you're describing islands, but I imagine that when the network is activated, there are bridges and highways in between those islands. So the islands are no longer isolated. Just what is the vision and how did that idea emerge?
I think that if I were to describe what body part I am, we're all kind of could relate to like some function in the body that we feel aligned with. I'm the fascia. I've always been this person who sees the connections between things. Like I said, I see this solar system of organization. So I'm always trying to how do we create the doorways into this vast system so communities, people can see what's available, and how do we create the bridges between them? And so the Islands of Coherence, my idea was, I didn't want to be on Facebook anymore. In my community endeavors, there's always needed to be a place where the community could engage, the community could share the insights and resources, not just a one-way street. So I wanted to have a place where people exploring coherence, not wanting to be on Facebook or some of the other social networks that were starting to be, very much just media and a lot of things that didn't resonate with me. So when I created my social network, my idea was all of these organizations that I love, they're in the solar system. If they all could have an island inside this one social environment, then a community member could come in and they could find HeartMath and they could find Global Coherence, they could find Unify, and they could find all these things that I feel are really helping us to come into our own purpose and live a coherent life and join together with people that share our passions and projects. So it was designed to be a place where those bridges and those connections could be seen, and that we could see what happens when we leverage our connectiveness instead of just doing our diverse part in it. So for me, I think it's because I'm the fascia. So I'm always thinking about how to create the bridges, how to connect the parts. And I like that. I like identifying all these wonderful things. Even when I'm working for an organization, I'm never just with that organization. I'm always saying, wow, there's all of these other partners that we could be collaborating with. And if we did, something more would emerge than we're capable of. So that's why the Islands of Coherence came.
So part of this, I hear, is you deciding to release yourself, graduate and release yourself from all those various organizations that you have helped and enabled earlier on. So let's just ask about this part of the journey for a bit. When you reflect on those various community endeavors that you've helped lead over the last 2-3 decades, can you speak to some of the key learnings in some of those situations, especially in terms of what does work and also what doesn't work, and what's the learning from this? Because in a way, we are catching you in a moment where you've released all that. So there is value in doing a bit of a retrace and reflect on the concrete learnings from those various experiences. How would you narrate these learnings that bring you today to this place of collaborative endeavors that can together thrive and bloom?
Yeah, I mean, from a personal one, a personal learning for me, and then I can kind of go into more of community and organizational. So I can start with personal. When my whole systems mind turned on, there was a whole bunch of capacities that came with it. Like it was almost like I could download how to ride a motorcycle, or I could download these things that came very easily to me. So I found myself doing, gosh, things I never did before, like creating the first online educational programs, or creating a whole in-person community. There was all of these things that I had naturally a pathway to. But I found that there was a part of me that was attached to those ideas that I was getting. And so there was a forcing as opposed to an aligning. And I was part of the gene keys. And so one of my gene keys, actually my purpose, is force, strength, and majesty. And I learned more from the energy of force than anything else, because when I started to realize, when I was pushing because I thought I had the right answer, it was emerging, things were going good, but it was ahead of where maybe the organization was able to meet me at, or the founder. Usually I always worked for charismatic leaders who had the message, and then I was the person to bring that message into how does the community get involved. So if I got ahead of where their vision was, right, there would be this tension. So I started to learn over the years to notice when I was trying to rush ahead of the right timing, when my idea got away with me and I got attached to it, like we were talking about, like I had my 4 things, and I was attached to how that went. And the more that those organizations or my relationship with them or something would collapse because of that forcing ahead of the timing, or not being in the current or the flow, the more that I began to let go and notice that when I relaxed and I didn't impose timing, when I responded to the natural timing of what was emerging, when I listened more to the other stakeholders that were saying, wait, this is going too fast, or I feel uncomfortable with this, or whatever it was, when I actually stayed in the present and in this more curious state, I entered into a strength and a current that I could then ride, and more got done with less effort. So that was definitely a personal path for me of really coming to this letting go of resistance and being present to what's emerging. And I do so much more with so much less effort than I did before, because I stopped forcing against, even though I felt like I had the answer, and I think I did in a lot of cases, but I wasn't in the current of what was emerging. I was still in my idea about it.
So
that created challenges.
That's a huge, big learning. It is the pivot from thinking you have to get the idea and or the concept, and if you can describe it to people, they will certainly see what you see, and that will be sufficient if you can just articulate it a little more convincingly and more powerfully. But now the discovery is, it's about finding a way to synchronize or harmonize the current, the collective emergent current, especially when you work with communities. So let me ask the second question, because so you've mentioned you worked with 3 or 4 or 5 different situations where you were the right arm or the left arm or the 2 arms or whatever of a charismatic leader who were very much envisioning something and wanted to build something large, and you were there to facilitate that. So I suppose one learning is what you already just shared, but what would you say about what have you learned about the dynamic of working with a founder and or / charismatic leader or guru or whatever would be the name of the word that you will characterize in these situations? What are some key learnings from those experiences?
I mean, one for me is that I won't do that again.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yes.
I mean, I'm my own leader now, and that was that was a really good choice for me to make.
A painful long journey there.
Yeah, and a good one too. I mean, I appreciate all of the leaders that I had the opportunity to work with. They really helped to bring out this new message of our conscious evolution and our unity with all things. It's always been along that lines. And I think what's been challenging is that the charismatic leader often has a role, and it's disseminating the message. But then they start to attract in people that are responding to that message, that want to learn about it, want to live it, want to create with it. They found their home. This is exactly right. This is what I've been looking for. I'm resonating with it. And so then the activity of empowering a community often isn't what their job is. It's not really part of that. And so as I would come in and build infrastructure and community would start to form, it would not exactly be what their work was. And I'm a good energy. I'm a big energy and I can help. But when my attention kind of went over, now it's supporting the community and the infrastructure and those things, and less energy supporting that person's like 100% vision, then there would be a bit of a tension. There would be kind of a sense that we weren't on the same page, even though it emerged out of the same vision. So I think part of it is that if I could have stayed as an energy arm of that leader and really followed what their passion was, then that maybe I could have helped them do that more. But my biology, my unique note was always about how to empower the community to embody those messages and those visions. So I think that's why it's better for me to actually be my own leader, so that I can follow this passion of community building and how do we embody these ideas, and not have it be that we're following some individual, but that we're following ourselves. And so that was the turn. And I noticed in the communities, and we can go in some of the learning, is that when the communities started to embody the ideas that they aspired to from the leader, and they became their own sovereign expression of those ideas and wanted to start to create with them, that's when things really started to open up. And that's not necessarily what the leader wants, right? The leader is not necessarily wanting to proliferate themselves into a multiplicity of expression, because their role, at least, during that time, it was harder for leaders. They didn't keep evolving their education and their stories because the community was attracted to those particular things. So
you're narrating that story in a very forgiving and compassionate way towards the leaders, which is fair enough. You're not judging leaders for those situations. You're saying no, each of those individuals, they worked in the role that was right for them. They were here to frame a story and become the ambassadors of those stories. It wasn't their destiny or calling to necessarily be the one to evolve with the community. There are, however, leaders that are prepared to be the founder, originator of something, and then evolve as the community matures around them. That is a different archetypal journey. It's just a different calling, a different mission, a different archetype. And what you're describing is that this time needs all those archetypes. It needs the people that are still holding to the core message. They don't need to change. They can be what they're here and meant to be in terms of the broadcasting function that they have. But there is also the importance and the facility that is found through leaders who are able to actually evolve and change their role as the solar system that is developed around them enables them to transcend who they were earlier on. These are important distinctions in the story of what's emerging now. Or else we are locked This is probably where we need to transition, Teresa, from a solar system metaphor more to a Milky Way galaxy metaphor, because some of what we're describing in the earlier, so really the last 40, 60 years, modalities of luminary teachers appearing, and often they develop a solar system around them. And what you are saying, no, what we now need is something that, a structure or an archetype that allows the people that emerge through different experiences to become sovereign agents of their own leadership capacity, their own original creativity within the honoring and the value of what they have found on their journey, but released to be themselves. And there are so many people all around the planet that are, and certainly when we're looking at younger generations, they're not going to follow anybody. They are prepared to work in collaboration and as a network with others, but they are about discovering how this time wants to be conductive for them through the process of their own life and their own discovery. That's what they're after. And so if we don't have leaders and structures and ecosystems that facilitate that, then something big is lost. So how do you allow for that and also allow and honor the various luminary leaders and create facilitate a system that enables for all to thrive? That's what I'm hearing in the story.
I think it has emerged. When I think about all the leaders that I've served that kept saying their message and inspired people, and that the communities of people that have ingested it and then found their own relationship to it are doing some of the best work on the planet. So I think it's naturally happening, but you need to have those incubation spaces. You know, a lot of, like what I did was jump in. I'm a community member. I'm not the leader. And yet I want to explore what that means to me and share what it means to me as everybody else is sharing what it means to them. And we discover something different and unique that was inspired by that orator, by that inspiring voice, but now is emerging uniquely from me. So then I own it instead of just being inspired by it. And that's, that's the job that we each have. I'll say one more thing about the organizations and what happened around it. There was always a point where it seemed like an emerging style, right? Where we take these ideas and we bring them into community and we listen to what the community is doing. How is it working? What are we really learning? Where are the questions? All of those things. And the organization would start to operate more like a living system. That's always the way I like to design. Well, it would get to the point where it's like really ready to take off, but it needed the money, right? Like they were always, early organizations, not well funded, right? So everybody's excited about what's emerging, but as soon as really some money needs to be brought in, all of a sudden this old idea about how business works, about what you really need to do in order to get the money would in some ways compromise this emergent pattern that actually felt like it was like, wow, it's emerging from the whole community. It's actually coming. But then it would be, it can't work that way. Like it doesn't work like that in the real world. So there would always be a little bit of a bifurcation at that moment when the real resources were needed in order to fuel something that was emerging. So that was often challenging too.
And so what is the insight? What's the learning about how that challenge, that conundrum is being solved? Because so one way that has been addressed or attempted to be addressed is when the community or the endeavor says, well, we've got to find what is it that we are prepared to serve, not just internally for ourselves, but in the world. So there would often be the emergent realization that in an endeavor, that if it wants to marshal resources, then it needs to find an archetypal transition from being introspective or inward looking to the phenomenology of the emergence of the richness that's occurring on the inside, to what can it serve outside of itself. And sometime that would be built in right from the get-go. It is sometimes the very arising of an endeavor has that service orientation to the local community or the larger community, but it's that orientation that would sometimes allow for, so how can we attach value and financial value to that? And that is novel and sometimes works great, but has its own limitation. So what have you found that has worked well in addressing that challenge?
For me, inviting the community that I'm engaging in whatever it is to consider what they're investing their time, energy, and resources into, and being sure that what they're investing their time, energy, and resources into are the things that are serving them to show up and do their part and be the passion. And I think that the kind of resources that we need in order to support some of these emergent new ways of being are going to come from the people that are engaged in them as the initial kind of infusion of energy that then will attract more resources and more engagement from it. And that's sometimes been a challenge where people, until you are really attuned to life and you really see that the quality of your presence, what you're resonating with, how you utilize your energy is actually manifesting the life that you live. Your relationship to money and energy has a distortion in it that isn't going towards the things that are actually creating this new life. But I'm still working on getting more flow going to support these new things for sure.
So there is a developmental conundrum to solve here. There is a communal conundrum to solve here. There is a financial and relationship with money conundrum to solve here. And there is an esoteric dimension to all of the above, because so part of what occurs in a community, if you gather around yourself a community, you're also sooner or later entering the grapple of the polarity that emerges, whether the community is serving an idea or a cause or a vision, or whether the community is serving the people that gather in the community, and what's a way to accommodate for both, and at the same time be in a third place open to its own emergent evolution. All that becomes challenging, especially when you then want to marshal resources. And part of your challenge then is, how do you become attractive to new circles of people? So if you are at the core of the endeavor, you now run into the challenge of you need to continue to work to update on the inside such that the initial circles that gathered, that they're still interested. Because if you stay in the original message, you are following the same challenge that you have observed with all those inspirational and charismatic founders. But so then you need to build in yourself the system to be able to operate at different altitudes and generate new work at those different levels, and be demonstrating to the people that are close in that you are in yourself evolving and not repeating the same thing, and that you are concurrently translating some new work that would offer bridging facilitation for people that are not part of the original core. That is an intensive, robust, developmental, spiritual, communal endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, that's what our cohort has been doing. I'm excited to say, going from working for an organization into kind of seeding an emergent process, and each of us putting first and foremost our own emergence first, and then supporting each other with what's emerging. There's a core community, and that's always what would happen. A core community would form, and they would begin to generate what those next pieces are. So it wouldn't be me as the leader, it would be a collective, always like a guide's core or something would begin to form that would take the responsibility so that I could enter this, I could be in the circle, not in the center of the circle. And if I can get to the point where I start in the center to kind of help seed something, because that's part of my particular pattern, and then quickly move to the circle so that now I'm a member of the circle, and what emerges is going to come from our collective embodiment of what it is that brought us together, and how do we collectively begin to grow the community, because each person's going to reach out to a different demographic. Each person's going to have a different pattern. Maybe somebody in our cohort is really here to serve people who haven't quite woken up yet, who are really kind of on that verge. There's somebody, one of our girls in the group is doing that. It's very different from me. I don't appeal as much to somebody who hasn't had an opening. So I think choosing to build from the inside out, not get ahead of ourselves of trying to build something big because we need flow or we think that that's the way to go, but actually build naturally from where we are. And that's what we've been modeling in the Islands of Coherence. And it's a little slower process, but it's more real and substantiated than as if we had an idea that we were running with. Instead, we have ourselves.
Well, I'm wondering whether what you're describing as retreating from the middle to the circle is actually truly fully possible, because you also need to serve your own evolutionary process, or else, so if you merge to the circle that you brought together, there is something inorganic about that. But if the circle enables you to enter a whatever language you'll choose for it, but more of an eldering function, where you are, you are part of the birthing of its future, but you don't necessarily need to play any limiting role in being in a circle. You're free to roam around, then perhaps it is more sustainable. So you are describing, we are reflecting here, we could call it in many names. We could call it distributed leadership. We could talk about it in terms of feminine leadership more than masculine leadership. Not one that excludes and leaves out the masculine energy. Actually, you need the integration of both. All of those are different characterizations of how leadership is showing up. What else would you add to this inquiry of how leadership is showing up in those various experimentations? Because you're involved in so many different organizations, and we never got to ask you about what was World Unity Week inside all of this experience and all the other various endeavors. So I'm interested that you go through some of those and try to harvest some further wisdom about leadership, facilitative leadership in those different spaces.
Yeah. I mean, in the one where in the cohort, with the Islands of Coherence, one thing that I would say about it, with me moving to the outside, like me moving into the circle, like, come on, we're leading this together, doesn't mean that I let go of the qualities of leadership and the experience and the role that I play. I'm still supporting this cohort with the gifts that I have to bring forth their gifts, because I did that for leaders. So now I'm doing it for a cohort of people. So it doesn't mean when I stand in the outside in the circle one, I'm still connected to my own thing. What is my part to bring into this? And I don't compromise that, because now I'm equal in the circle, because I'm going to bring my unique note, my skills, and that's the contribution I can make. So it's a process, because in some ways there's times where I take the leadership role because I have the experience, I offer up something, the group decides on it, we run with it together. And I think that's important, is that when we go into a distributive leadership, we don't leave our leaderfulness. We don't back down with the role that we have to play, but we play it full out. But but people aren't acquiescing to our leadership. And if we notice they are, then we call it. We say, wait a minute, I don't want this to be everybody's just leading because I have this idea. Does it resonate? Is it true for you? Is there some resistance? Is there something else that the group mind can bring forward so that my idea can be enhanced and we can say yes together, right? So that's important. I had to not lose the power and potency of my leadership in this circle and still be able to stand and say, I know I'm not going to run the show, because I know that's not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So that's an important one. And I would say with World Unity Week, this is a great experiment. So there's Sign Network, John Raymer, Ben Bowler with Unity Earth, Purpose Earth. They've been doing these events, World Unity Week and then Peace Week. And they have been doing some wonderful things to bring everybody's voice in, lots of collaborations, an opportunity to do that. And this year, more of us, like Global Coherence Pulse, did a pulse every day. We brought in other leaders like Dot Maver with a Global Silent Minute. More people started to enter into the conversation. And this idea popped up. What if we take the time between World Unity Week and Peace Week, which happened to be 99 days from the start of World Unity Week to the end of Peace Week, and we make a commitment to collectively join around a single purpose and see what would happen. What would happen if this group, this solar system, but really it's like the Milky Way of organizations that are all showing up saying that they're doing things and they're participating and creating change in the world. What if we all came together for 99 days around peace through unity towards a thriving world for all? And that we focused our attention on restoring right relationship with earth and water and fire and air and all of those things. And that we focused on human needs. What would be the demonstration at the end of those 99 days? So everybody got on board. That sounds like a great thing. They decided to spin up a network, a mighty network, which is what the Islands of Coherence is based on. And I have a lot of experience of doing that. And all of a sudden, I'm being called to help them form this network, which for me, there's no clear purpose just yet. It's kind of happening really fast. I like to actually have an idea of what we want to do with it. So for me, it's been interesting to notice where I'm being called up, noticing that I have a role to play in supporting this prototype, this playground, this opportunity to see what happens when a group comes together. I love that. Oh, let's come together around this shared purpose. Let's see what happens. How do people contribute? What kind of system do we need to make that visible? Those are all part of my skill set. And I'm really good at listening to everybody laying down their bundles and noticing, how they feel about them, so that I can begin to support, like, well, that's really great because that's doing this and this person's doing that. So what a nice bridge. Like, that's the way my mind is thinking. And also needing to be really clear, I don't want my position to be assumed. I don't want to all of a sudden find myself in the center of something that isn't really clear yet what my role is. So I'm sitting back and I'm like, this week, especially just kind of being in the emergence of noticing what really wants to happen here and what's my role, instead of me just jumping in and making it all wonderful and that kind of thing. And so I think that there's some impulses that are rising up where we really do know that it's time we come together in coherence around shared purpose. And that when we do that, something extraordinary is going to be revealed to us about what our part is. But the process of doing it can feel a little bit messy. And I think I'm learning to listen for what my part is, and to really, really listen to what my part is, and to lean in fully, like say yes to the universe when I know that that's mine to do. But not to rush in, not to just do it because I know how to do it, but know that it's going to come from the unique contributions of all of the different players that are going to make something extraordinary occur. And I learned that because in the past, I would do that. I would get everything set up. I would make it really beautiful. I would do that. And then I would find that I'm left kind of holding the responsibility of engagement. And I want to be a part of the engagement. I don't want to be the orchestrator of it. And so if I listen to what my part is and I do that, then other people are going to step up and do their part. And something uniquely different is going to emerge than what I'm capable of manifesting. So it's been really good. It's been good. The reflections about my leadership and the quality of my listening and my presence has been really beautiful. Like I feel like I'm being received at the level at which I think I'm showing up, which is always really a good sign. Like how somebody might reflect how you are in a group or in a team or something. If it fits how you think you're showing up, then you're on track to really listening to do your part. Yeah.
Well, so what I'm hearing in this testimony of this emerging experience as we speak, that the quality that you are describing has about it self-compassion and self-esteem of the right kind, and the sense that you can't really be fully present to your purpose without exercising that kind of self-awareness, self-authoring, self-esteem, self-compassion, all those various qualities of honoring yourself inside the endeavor, the bigger endeavor you're part of, and that ultimately to facilitate the midwifery process of the whole, you cannot lend your best talent and capabilities if you are not engaged on the inside to enable the midwifing of your own new self emerging through the process. That is part of the inner architecture that I hear through the testimony of this experience.
Yeah. And if I rushed in, because I could feel it, it was like, boy, I could help set this up. But I don't know if that would have actually fit what the actual purpose is. I needed to pause and not just run in. And what I decided was that whatever I'm doing right now, how does what I'm doing and what's rising up for me, the Islands of Coherence, the Global Coherence Pulse, I'm working with Julie Kroll now, and we've joined our companies, Islands of Coherence for the Good of the Whole, because we were doing the same thing. So we started to come together. So how can I participate in this new endeavor in a way that furthers the activities that I was already doing? And by doing that, model the part, like I'll make a circle inside of this bigger circle, and I'll model the components that I think would be valuable. And by me focusing on furthering my own endeavors inside of this larger endeavor of a shared purpose, then I would be modeling what it is that I could bring without distracting myself from doing my part by trying to do something for the whole. So I felt like a fractal representation of what I feel like I can contribute that's aligned with my purpose was the best contribution I could make.
The reason we are staying in this space for quite a bit is because in many ways we are probably sensing into the holy grail of the evolutionary process. Because if you scan the last 200 years, certainly the last 60 years, and within that the last 40 or 20 years, what the conundrum is that individuals have made profound breakthroughs, right? You've got luminaries, some known luminaries and many unknown luminaries who are in their own experience, in their own journey, are able to break through in profound ways and experience not just enhanced states, not just powerful momentary impacts in the world, but the integration of both, that they're able to experience activation on the inside and an impact in the world in a profound way. But what you do not have through this very effectively is, why I'm saying is the Holy Grail, is what you are trying to create with this network of islands of coherence. Because where the blockage has always been is breaking through these bridges of luminaries such that it becomes something that serves a greater purpose, and they can each somehow maintain their own journey so that they're tethered in their own evolution. That's a process that in many ways the unbroken, the unbridgeable space over the last 20, 30, 40, 60 years. And it's very easy for people in these circles to look at the main large institutional powers in the world that run the world and say, well, when those systems truly transcend, then we will have a different world. But time and again, you will find that when enlightened people, enlightened leaders come together, they struggle with the same issues and the same power structures and the same egoic challenges. So until such time as that can be demonstrated on the inside, it's going to be a little ineffective to complain or to hope that the United Nations or the World Bank or the largest corporations of the world where I often get to interact with leaders, that they will actually discover that new way. So this is why we are dialoguing about it so long, and this is why you're describing that you are in the crucible of this experiment.
Yes, a prototyping and building to learn, not to last. Like right now, it feels like the most important time to really experiment with what it takes and to be honoring of the diversity, compassionate with our attachment to the part that we're bringing in, right? So we can really hear each other. Because I think if we're heard for the part that we're bringing and we're acknowledged for the potency of what it is, then we're more willing to listen to how that actually can evolve or fit with what's emerging on the other side of the next scale. Yeah, it's really taking a lot more interpersonal care to come to those places where we can actually co-create something that's different than and greater than the sum of our parts. And that's the part I'm noticing the most, like the quality of my presence in care in the conversations make all the difference.
And you're describing the 3H. The people need to be heard. They need to be honored in terms of what they bring to the table. And they need to find a way to harvest the unique capability and experience inside the new emergent fractal of what is appearing next. Because if they cannot find that some of that quality or capacity or experience is harvestable, then there is no bridging of what they've been able to develop inside a new future. And that's very important that is made possible.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't want to throw out what we've created so far. We want to bring the best of it with us for what, and whatever is needed most now. But it's a tough one. I think we're at a point where we're actually able to do it more than we ever have, because I've been trying to do this collaboration thing for years and years and years and years. And there's always like different things that get in the way. And this is the first time I feel we're committed. There's groups of people who are actually committed to doing what it takes to collaborate at a whole new scale. So I'm optimistic of what's possible. And it's a project. It's a job for each of us.
So you're describing a quality of commitment that's present. You're describing a quality of compassion that's present. And that inside it, perhaps that is a bit of what you mean when you say life is innovating through us, when we show up with that quality of commitment and care and compassion. We enable life to innovate through us. Am I internalizing that idea correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. And releasing resistance to what is, and actually being present to what is and our relationship to it. What's the context we're adding to it? What's our belief about it? What are we resonating with? What's emerging in our lives? I think a question-led life is important right now, that we're asking really good questions of ourselves and our teams and our projects, but we're willing to ask those good questions and stay in the unfolding answering of them instead of our idea about them.
And two other words you used were discerning, being able to be discerning in that, what, in terms of listening carefully to what is the part that you are called to play. And right next to that attuned discernment, be prepared to be astonished and be surprised yourself.
Yeah. Julie Kroll was listening to a podcast one day, right before a call we had, and I can't remember the woman's name. I'll need to do it so that we can quote her properly. But she said, it's time now to move from self-improvement to self-astonishment. And I think that's the place that I am in my life as a 60-year-old woman who feels like I have contributed a lot in the world and I have some good things in my bundle that I can call on. But I know that there's something more being called forth from the inside of me. My majesty is ready to rise. And the part that I'm here to play, I know, is simpler and more essential and really my joy. And that's going to come from me attuning to it and relaxing into it and just doing my part, even though sometimes I think I could be doing 3 more things to help this, but I'm just going to do what is mine to do, and open to being astonished with what happens when I do that. Really trust it.
How about if we take this as a parting invitation and message, an invitation to relax, to discover how you are emerging on the inside in a whole new way, and be prepared to be astonished.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's do it.
Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.